Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back, and let's chat about what is happening up in the stars above for this Christmas week. As you can tell, I've gotten into the holiday spirit. I don't normally wear hats. For some reason, they just don't I just don't like them. This is the only hat that my husband has that I can actually wear that feels not like I'm wearing something heavy on my head or something weird like that. So, welcome everybody. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. It was certainly, I'm sure, for most people, a very busy weekend, being the last one before Christmas. I did not even venture out to the stores because I just knew it would be crazy, even though we did some family stuff. Anyway, good morning to all of you who are just joining. Today, what I want to talk about is the energies that we can see for this week through human design and through the gene keys. And that's because, for all of the time that I've been growing up, there are all the words to songs like Joy to the World, um, It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, Silent Night, all of these songs that evoke a certain energy about joy and about peace and about love and about, just the holiday spirit. And it wasn't until I learned human design that I realized that the energies for the week of Christmas, from winter solstice all the way through Christmas, literally into the end of the year, are all about those themes. So it's so fascinating to see how that plays out. So this morning, I want to share that with you. And as well, we have some transits coming up this week that are, by all normal standards, these would be transits that were difficult. And yet they're falling in Christmas week. So I feel like there is this potential for us to move through some tricky energies and still maintain this air of peace and love, this Christmas feeling, right? So we'll talk about that. And I think that will take us to the end of the broadcast. So, good morning as people are showing up here. I see Tom. He says, "How's it, Astro Design family?" Donna or Diana, excuse me, S, good morning to you as well. Asa, good to see you. She loves the hat. These are just not my colors though. So I'm fighting against the way that it makes me look yeah, they're just not my colors. And Londa, thank you very much. Catherine Wister, good morning. Kamal, good morning to you. Why don't you wear because Tom, somebody else asked me that, and I'm like, no, just not me. And he's referring to the fact that Terry has this shirt that makes it look like his that he's got a woman's chest with like ornaments on where the nipples would be. It would be almost vulgar to wear on a Good Morning show like this. Peggy, good morning to you. Terry says you look so festive. Thank you for your support. Good morning, Julie. It's good to see you. And Londa says it's already been interesting. Ooh. Kiki, gracious greetings. Same to you, my dear. And Paulette, good morning and Merry Christmas to you as well. So let's dive in, shall we? So last week, or Friday, we talked about the winter solstice. And we're going to continue this theme a bit because what I didn't get to was about what the energies of the solstice were from human design and from the gene keys. And again, this is kind of where we see this thematic energy of self love and of compassion and now heading into tomorrow's energy, the energy of joy and stillness that kind of come in. Stillness, which I'm saying is more like peace, love, that all of those kind of rolled in together. And this is a seasonal thing. Every season that we come to, an equinox or a solstice, the energies of the sun and earth sit in the identity center of your human design, which is a center of love and direction. And four of the gates, well, all of the gates do have a theme around love, but there are specifically four gates that are hit at the solstices and equinoxes that are about love. And this iteration for the winter solstice is always about the sun at the gate of self love or love of the self, and the earth at the gate of the love of humanity. In quantum human design, we call this the gate of compassion. So the four gates of love are the love of self and humanity and spirit and the physical. And the equinoxes take up spirit and the physical, while the solstices take up the ideas of self love and this idea of compassionate being in the world and the love of your fellow humans, etc. Right? So they're repeating themes that we see at least four times of years, and they act as gateways and almost like an invitation, right? Like pulling us into the idea of bringing more love energy to the planet and more love energy into your own lives and your own families and the way that you show up in the world. So at the winter solstice, the week begins with the sun at the gate of the love of self or self love. And, this energy reminds us of the importance of accepting ourselves as we are. Self love is about honoring your uniqueness, your unique identity, if you will, and learning to love yourself without conditions. This is not about being selfish. And it is kind of the foundation for showing up in an authentic way, or showing your authentic face to the world. So, the question really for reflection, if you will, for all of us during this week, which doesn't end, by the way, until tomorrow, the 24th, would be about how do I nurture self love in this season of giving and togetherness? Because it's real easy to let go of the love of yourself when you're so busy doing things for other people. Now, the earth in any of these formulas, right? There's always the sun and the earth. The sun shows us the highest and best of what can be achieved in the week, like what is the evolutionary energy pushing us toward. And then the earth always shows us, well, what do you have to have settled before you can move to that highest energy? So before we have the highest benefits of self love, we also have to have conditioning, or I mean, compassion. And this energy is sort of conditioned for us to behave in certain ways. For example, compassion is much easier for us to give to others than it is for us to give to ourselves. And so compassion here in the context of this week is the grounding energy. And it calls us to practice extreme compassion and acceptance for not only the diversity of life forms on the planet, but also ourselves. And this energy at the gate 15 is kind of interesting because it does have an extreme sort of potential in its expression. It sometimes I call it the chicken little gate, like this the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And it is sometimes problematic in our recognition that we have to learn to flow with life's variabilities and embrace sort of the highs and the lows of humanity with grace, right? So we can't all be the most loving, kind, compassionate, heart centered beings 100% of the time. We're human, right? Something will trigger you and you'll get outside of that compassion. Or somebody says something to you and it takes you out of self love. So the gate 15 reminds us that compassion is the call to the heart, and how can you show more compassion to yourself and to others, even in the midst of holiday chaos, even in the midst of family and maybe family traumas and dramas that occur at this time of the year? So it reminds us that the week, starting with the winter solstice, reminds us that compassion starts with ourselves, with us, as individuals. It's a time of rebirth and renewal, right? The winter solstice tells us that, the year, we've come to the shortest day of the year, and that the light is, as promised, returning. right? And that makes this time of year the perfect backdrop for us to align with self love and love for the collective or humanity, right? Compassion. And then as we move into Christmas week, which really begins on, let's see, this week, it begins December 25th this year, also on Christmas Day, and moves through till the 30th. It's the gate of joy that now becomes where the sun is. And in the earth, we have the gate of stillness. So this, it came upon a midnight clear feeling, right? Where we're seeing the earth wrapped in this peaceful, perhaps it's, snow, perhaps it's just a feeling of this stillness energy. And as the earth settles into that gate, the sun is actually showing us about vitality and bliss and joyfulness. So the sun, the energy is also in this sun at the gate 58 is also about the joy of mastery and improvement. And as it sits in this last week of the calendar year, we get a glimpse maybe into our lives and what have we achieved during this particular year? What is still left for us to improve? But not doing that in a way that's judgmental, but also, enjoying the bliss of, a job well done, right? A year that maybe has had many ups and downs and turmoils, but has also been filled with love and compassion and many other joyful things. So it inspires us to find happiness in refining and enhancing our lives. There's a sense of playfulness here, too, as well, in the gate 58. The joy isn't just in the outcomes of the things that have happened in your life, but in the process itself. Like, who are you becoming in the process of becoming joyful? And how can you find joy in just the small things, right? Those are just as important as the bigger things that may be coming, for you in any given year. So we get to reflect on all of the year, the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the joys, the not so joys, right? The traumas, the dramas, but in a way that sees us as part of an evolutionary cycle. Now, the earth will be at the gate of stillness. And that's the 52. It is an energy that is about the focus on inner calm, that no matter what the chaos is, that inside the weather's fine, right? And that there's calm winds. It reminds us that stillness is really the foundation for clarity and action. And amid the busyness of the season, it invites us to slow down and reflect, right? The 52. And where can you create stillness in your life could be a good question to ask at this time. Because in that stillness, you can connect to your deeper purpose, to your life's purpose, right? And the interplay then of these two gates brings a meaningful close to the year, to the calendar year. I'm saying that deliberately, calendar year. Can you tell? Because, I'm about to shift my entire beingness and your awareness to the astrological year, which begins in March. So, this to me is an ending, but not necessarily an ending of the year. It is a gateway to what will be the last 3 months of the astrological year. And we get a time to celebrate what we've achieved, what we've accomplished, while also pausing to recenter ourselves, right? Bring ourselves back into the center and get prepared for the journey ahead. So when we connect the 2 weeks, the winter solstice week with the sun at gate 10 and the earth at 15, and the Christmas week with the sun at gate 58 and the earth at gate 52, we find that it's a time for us to align our personal light with the collective, merging self love and compassion, and then balancing joyful celebration and reflective stillness, guiding us to enter what is the new calendar year with clarity and with gratitude. Now, if we look at these two things through the gene keys, then we get these layers, right? We get a holographic view of what these energies are all about. We also get new words, which I That's what I'm a word person, so I love the gene keys and the words. And in the gene keys, remember, everything is arranged in shadow, gift, and siddhi, right? The highest expression. It's a Sanskrit word that means like the highest or the most divine or something like that. So we get this idea that we are moving from that shadow perspective into this gift and into the higher light of what is possible, right, with the energies of these particular gene keys, which are also the gates in your human design. So I don't want people confused about that. Um, they're just different words for the same things, okay? Um, so in the gene keys, the gate 10 has a shadow called self-obsession. And self obsession arises when we become overly focused on ourselves in a way that is isolating us from others, right? Takes us away from others. And this can, manifest as excessive self criticism or narcissism. It's the fear based perspective that sees individuality as separateness, right? The whole problem, partially on this planet, is that we see ourselves we have a problem between individuality and humanity, right? Or collective awareness or collective humanity, where we feel like, as an individual that if we're part of this collective, then that takes away from my individuality. And if I'm an individual and I live in that individuality, then I become isolated from humanity. And those two are not mutually exclusive, right? We're part of both. And we're here to express ourselves as individuals, but also we are adding our particular individuality to the collective, right? So we're all different. We all have different gifts and so forth. So that fear-based perspective is about self-obsession, right? So that is the lower expression. In the gift of this particular gate 10 or gene key 10, we have this gift of naturalness. And naturalness emerges when we fully embrace ourselves and are free of judgment about who we are, about what we do, about how we share ourselves with others. It's sort of this effortless expression of your authenticity and also creates the ripple effect of inspiration for others, right? The more naturally you are aligned with the truth of who you are, with your gifts and what your individual life purpose is, the more that you become an inspiration for others, right? So it's not true then that the self and loving oneself puts you separate from humanity. It just doesn't, right? You're adding to that picture. So, this energy in the gene keys of naturalness also reminds us that true self love comes from simply being ourselves without pretense and without effort, right? The most natural you. And then the siddhi of the gene key 10 is about being, right? True being. At the siddhic level, this gene key embodies beingness and which is a state beyond doing, right? It's their opposites. Being and doing are two opposite energies. This is about our, it's the ultimate alignment, right, with the truth of existence, of your existence, where love flows naturally. And how can you embody being without doing rather than doing? You don't have to not do because we do, right? But during the solstice time, maybe you could take a look at that in your own life, right? What would it look like, to be rather than to do? And that's difficult when we're running around, getting food ready, buying presents, wrapping those presents, going to holiday parties and family get-togethers. All of that can take us into doing, and yet the season, the solstice reminds us that the highest expression during the season is about beingness, which is partly linked to self love. Now, the earth in the gene key 15 is the shadow of dullness. So we're on this path from dullness to fluorescence via magnetism and fluorescence. I just love this word. So I can't wait to get to that part. But let's start with the shadow of dullness in the gene key 15. And the shadow of dullness reflects a bit of disconnection. Actually, it just pure disconnection from life's rhythms and diversity. It's a stagnant energy in the lowest expression. And it arises when we resist the cycles and the rhythms of life, the ebb and the flow of existence, and we cling to routines or we fear change, right? That where we get very caught up and stuck in an old paradigm. So, a question that you might ask yourself during this season, from the Earth's perspective, is where am I resisting life's natural rhythms? And how is that dampening my vitality? How is that keeping you from expressing the highest here, which would be of joy and vitality and life force and expression of that life force to others? Now, the gift is magnetism, and magnetism, right? It's not a particularly sexy word, but the gift of magnetism awakes when we embrace life's dynamic nature. When we're living in harmony with the world's diversity, we radiate a sort of magnetic energy that naturally attracts to us the people, the opportunities, the experiences that that are, in our life's path, that take us to the higher expression of ourselves. It's a powerful call for us to embody the beauty of our unique rhythm, right? And everybody's rhythms are different, and knowing what your rhythms are and where you are in your life cycles is very important, because otherwise you're always trying to be something that you're not, or trying to do things that are against the right timing. So the gate 15 kind of puts us in alignment with that right timing. And partially that happens because, and this is just an aside, is that it is part of a channel that is called rhythm. And on the opposite end of the 15 is the gate 5, which is, where routines are. That routines that support us, right? But it can also be places where we get stuck in a rhythm that isn't supportive, and then we fear change. And that's what we're talking about here with the shadow of dullness and moving through magnetism, where we allow that magnetic energy to draw to us the right experiences, the right people, etc. So then we can move to the highest expression in the gate 15, which is fluorescence. And the word fluorescence means not fluorescent lights, um, but this sort of profound flowering of consciousness. And it's profound in that it's about where all life kind of converges in this radiant unity, and it creates this extraordinary harmony, this harmony in our lives, and it's about embodying all of this harmony and expressing divine grace in its fullest expression. So how can you create space in your life this week, because now we're talking about from Christmas Day on, for the divine flowering of life's potential in and around you, right? So we're preparing for that, moving that energy into Christmas week. All right. How's everybody doing out there? Good morning, Tina. Good morning, TD Hawk. Good morning, Jamon. Good morning, Christine. Good morning, Narges. Good morning, Teddy and Patty. It's good to see you all out there this morning. Yes, I'm the Astro Christmas elf this morning. Often my family is on vacation or we're out of town, and so usually I'm not broadcasting this week of Christmas. But this year we're all home. And so today and on Friday, I will be on air and able to share Christmas spirit with you all. Who knows what I'll dress up like on Friday? Probably nothing, just my usual. Okay, so if you guys have any questions about the energies of that winter solstice, gate 10 of self love, gene key of being in its highest expression, let me know. now I'm going to move into Christmas week or Christmas Day through the 30th of December, where the sun moves into the gene key 58. Now, we've already talked about the sun in the gate 58, which was the gate of joy or bliss or vitality. In the shadow of this gene key 58 lives dissatisfaction. And where I'm getting this information, by the way, if you all want to know, is from the Gene Keys book. And when you look up a gene key in the book, I'm going to look up gene key 58 since that's what I'm about to work on or talk to you about. I'm sorry, my book is older. You see up in the top left corner what the gene key is all about. You see the siddhi, which is bliss, the gift of vitality, and the shadow of dissatisfaction. And then you also get a theme, and the theme of this one is from stress to bliss. And then below that, you have some other information about the actual codon ring that it's a part of, which I don't want to confuse people about what that is, but it has to do with your DNA. What the program partners are of these, and that's different words than I use. What the amino acid is that it's associated here, and the physiology, like where in the body does this live. So with the gene keys, we get this more depth picture of what is happening with these energies. And in the shadow, this is dissatisfaction, and it emerges when we focus on what's wrong and we constantly strive for external fixes instead of focusing on what's right or possibilities, right? And it's a restless drive that sort of blinds us to the joy of inherently living life one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, right? 1 minute at a time. And the reflection here for everybody, perhaps with the shadow, is about where you might be overly focused on fixing things instead of appreciating the joy in the moment, right? Where you're seeing what's broken instead of what's still working and what's doing great. In the gift, we have vitality. And the gift of vitality transforms dissatisfaction into a dynamic, joyful engagement with life, right? That's so different than the dissatisfaction, the restless drive. The energy thrives on improvement, vitality does, but from a place of love and enthusiasm rather than criticism. So, criticism out and improvement in, but in a joyful way. Like, how can I make this even better? And it is an opportunity then for us to channel our energy into refining and improving life's systems, just life in a more joyful way, in a joyful expression. In the Siddhi, we get bliss, right? The Siddhi, the highest expression that we can reach, right? This is not us not being able to reach any of this energy. But at the Siddhic level, this gene key embodies bliss. It's sort of a transcendent state of pure joy. It's not tied to external circumstances. It's the ecstatic realization of life's inherent perfection. And I think we've probably all felt this at one time or another where, unbidden, this feeling of joy just bubbles up. Nothing triggered it, right? You're just doing what you love, or you're with the people you love, or you're just in a happy state. And this joy bubbles up, or this bliss bubbles up. And then the question becomes, how can we tap into that bliss? Just by simply loving and living during this holiday season, right? Because it's there, right? Here's the other thing that I forgot to say is that you all have access to all of this, right? You're not missing or lacking anything here. You are all capable of tapping into all of these energies at any time, right? It's a choice. It really is a choice. It's a choice to move out of dissatisfaction and into vitality, right? That next level. Um, it's also a choice to move out of vitality and up into bliss, right? Always, it's your choice. And even if, outer circumstances are dire or are seemingly out of whack, it doesn't stop you you can't use those things as excuses not to be in joy or bliss, right? It kind of shows us that it's a state of being rather than an emotion. Notice that well, if I didn't show you a picture this morning, but none of these gates sit on the emotional solar plexus, right? The first two, the 10 and 15, are on the identity center, the center of love and direction. And the gate 58 and the gate 52 are on the root center, which is the center for moving energy up from, the ground up, right, through the body. Now, the gene key 52, which is where the earth is sitting in the shadow, this is the energy of stress. And stress arises when we lose our inner stillness, right? Remember, this is the gate of stillness. It's in the gene keys. This is the shadow of stress, the gift of restraint, which says, keep rein it in. And the city is stillness. So we're on the path from stress to stillness through restraint. And we're going to talk a little more about each of these. So the shadow of stress arises when we are kind of letting the pressure of life overwhelm us, right? It's the energy of being scattered and unfocused and reactive to everything that's happening. And, that's so easy at the holiday season where you've got, people that you got to buy presents for and where you have this time that you need to take to do all of these different things. So the question then becomes, where are you letting stress take away from the peace of the present moment? That would be that shadow energy. In the gift level, we have restraint, which brings focused stillness into our lives, creating the space for sort of this deliberate, purposeful action. And it's about knowing when to pause and knowing when to breathe. And it allows for clarity to emerge into your life, right? So take moments to ground yourself in that stillness, right? Even in the craziness of it all. And do that before you have to respond to life's demands. Give yourself that moment or several moments of peace and stillness. At the city level, it is stillness, right? Stillness is a transcendent state of peace, and it permeates everything, every cell of your body, every bit of the air around you. And it's a profound realization that life is complete as it is. And this becomes a gateway then to unity consciousness. So all at the Christmas season, these are themes that we see in all of the music of the time. And insight here might come from how you can allow stillness to bring clarity and grace into your life, even during these hectic days and these hectic times. So, if we connect these themes, then the themes of self love and compassion to the themes of joy and stillness, we are being invited during this time to deeply align ourselves kind of within and without, right? Being aligned with self-love within and compassion for those of our fellow human beings, harmonizing individuality with universal love. And it becomes embodying the truth of who you are while embracing life's diversity. And then as well, we're being encouraged to find joy in life's flow and grounding ourselves in the calm of stillness. And together, these two energies of these last 2 weeks of the year create a foundation for us to take purposeful action and to find meaning in transformation. Right? They're big energies. All right. Any questions, guys? Let's see what's going on. Shan, hello, and Merry Christmas to you as well. All right. So if you guys have questions or observations about these gates in your own chart, because by the way, you all have all of this in your human design or in your gene keys. It's a matter of whether these are defined, meaning colored in, or if they're undefined, which would make them white in your human design or gene keys charts, right? If they are colored in, it means you have other planets that are occupying that energy. They're already bringing these themes into your life. If it's white or undefined, it doesn't mean that you don't have these energies. They're just not activated. They're more conditioned within you based on the people around you. And then what happens when planets like the sun and earth come to rest on those gates, it is a theme that suddenly is more available to you, that you see maybe more closely in the activation in your life. So for everyone, these get impacted, but just maybe in different ways, right? Depending on your personal human design. All right. Now, there are other things going on this week. So, what we've just talked about are all these kind of beautiful energies that are holding the best basis, the background of what's possible for these last 2 weeks of the year. And I'm including that from the winter solstice, right? So, from winter solstice through to the end of December, December 30th. And even though I know there's a 31st, but that belongs in the week of the first week of the year. And it's just the way the human design week flows, right? It doesn't flow with the 7-day week like we have on our calendar. Um, so those are backdrop energies, but going on simultaneously are some more challenging energies that maybe give us the opportunity to practice all of these things that I've just talked to you about: peace and self-love and compassion and bliss and vitality. And that first one happens tomorrow, which means it's already in effect. And this is one that has been in effect for a while. Only it moves, back and forth through the planets and their retrograde motions. And what I'm talking about is Jupiter in a square to Saturn. And again, this we talked a lot about this in the Astro Design 2025 webinar because it's such a big deal, for taking place in this year, but also the transitioning into 2025. And this is the second of 3 squares that Jupiter and Saturn will make. The first occurred August 19th, and that was also when Jupiter was in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces. This one tomorrow will also take place with Jupiter and Gemini, Saturn in Pisces. And the final square will happen in June of 2025, but Jupiter will be in Cancer then, and Saturn will be in Aries. So it'll have a different, that final square will have a different feel. And the backdrop of this particular transit started with Jupiter and Saturn in their conjunction that occurred December 21st of 2020, right? That was at 0 Aquarius. And that set the potential for the societal and cultural changes for the next 20 years because that cycle of conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn is every 20 years. So the conjunction then led to the sextile, which then leads to the square. And the square energy is a 90-degree relationship between the two planets, and it brings up tension and it brings up challenges. And you can see those challenges in your own life, but also you see those challenges as playing out in society and in culture. And we're seeing it, right? We're seeing absolutely this tension. And how is this playing out? And so this is an important part of a cycle that's always playing. Every 20 years, we're going through these kinds of cycles. And there's key themes to the square. There's tension between expansion and structure. Jupiter is expansion, growth, optimism. Saturn is more pessimistic, more constrictive, and more limiting. So we have two planets opposite in their focus coming into a challenge, a square, right? So Jupiter's expansion meets Saturn's contraction, and the energy is needing to be grounded, right? There's friction between the desire to explore, to grow, and expand, especially through communication, as Jupiter is in Gemini, and the need to create boundaries and discipline and focus on emotional or spiritual matters, Saturn in Pisces. So we have that. And then we're balancing flexibility with responsibility, right? Jupiter in Gemini thrives on intellectual curiosity, adaptability, networking, while Saturn in Pisces calls for deep reflection. It calls for emotional response ability and a commitment to aligning with higher ideals. And the tension here can feel kind of like being pulled in two directions, that scritchy feeling where, pushing and pulling. And it is a tension that is taking us toward boundless ideas, but we need to ground those ideas into reality, right? That's the Saturn part. And then we're navigating like conflicting perspectives, right? Jupiter in Gemini is looking from this higher perspective, like a collection of diverse viewpoints. We're seeing it from, 7 billion different eyes. While Saturn in Pisces asks us to transcend duality and find spiritual or emotional cohesion. The challenge lies in integrating those opposing forces without losing focus or clarity, right? So we feel somewhat scattered, maybe, or unfocused as these different energies are vying for expression. So, practical guidance for this transit, especially since you're going to experience it yet again, right? And in fact, it's not ever very far away from what we would call orb within impact, right? So, first, reevaluate plans and ideas. The square asks you to really critically think about. Um, or reassess, even, if you will, the foundations of your ideas and of your projects and your plans. Are they built on solid ground? Or are they too scattered to hold weight? So, as a person, this is for you. How do you integrate logic and intuition? Right? Jupiter in Gemini is focused on the intellectual, while Saturn in Pisces is operating off the emotional and the intuitive. So, how do we blend the both? Right? How do we blend them? And, maybe that's through spending some time in meditation or journaling. How do you balance your head and your heart when you're making decisions, especially, the big decisions in life as we go forward? And of course, we have to practice patience because none of this is going to happen very quickly. We may have quick things that happen or things that happen quickly, but they don't find their footing quickly unless we take the time. We have this pressure during this time to act, but rushing can lead to missteps. And the idea would be to develop a long-term strategy that is, going to support a foundation for what comes next in your life rather than just issuing out a bunch of quick fixes that, kind of make more of a mess, right, than to fix anything. So set small, achievable goals that align with a bigger vision rather than, the bigger vision and starting there and moving backwards, right? Communicate thoughtfully. That is another big deal. Jupiter's in Gemini. And, I don't know that I mentioned this before. Maybe I did. But Jupiter is in its detriment in Gemini. It's not in its happy place. Jupiter's in its happy place when it gets into Cancer. But Jupiter in Gemini is, having a little bit of difficulty. It has lofty goals. And Jupiter or Gemini has more of the, details and the plan. It's more logical, while Jupiter likes to be more idealistic. So they have some issues working together here. So because Gemini is a communication sign, then to share your ideas and to share conversation with people, be mindful of what you're saying, of how you're saying it. Ensure it's clear and it's compassionate and it's grounded in truth. Truth is another big deal here. And before speaking or writing, ask yourself if your message serves the greater good, right? Or is it better just to not say what it is that I'm thinking of saying? All good questions, right? So the transit reflects larger societal themes like information overload versus clarity of vision. There's an abundance of information and an abundance of opinions out there. And Saturn in Pisces calls for us to be more discerning and to create emotional alignment with truth. There's spiritual accountability. Saturn in Pisces challenges us to align our expansive dreams, the Jupiter ones, with practical spiritual or emotional accountability. We are the responsible parties. And of course, there are shifting beliefs happening in our culture, in our society, that ask us to confront the outdated belief systems and to replace them with ones that are both expansive and realistic. And I feel like there's this tug of war going on, between pulling us back to the past, but also getting us ready for a future. And that continues with the square. All right. Then as well, let's see, 8:45. All right. So um, remember that this transit isn't happening in a void, right? It's happening in the backdrop of the energy of compassion and self love, but then also taking us on the next leg of this journey, which is taking us into vitality, joy, bliss, right? As well as, using compassion and self love. So it's all part of this cycle, and Jupiter and Saturn being the more tricky aspect to that is asking us to remember those things, those basic foundational energies as we go through this next level of the square, which is likely going to be a little tricky. Now, the Jupiter Saturn cycle is always about a foundation for growth, right? This isn't happening as a punitive type thing. This is always happening in response to evolutionary pressures, right? To evolve and grow. And yet that is always going to have inherent within it some challenges because there's change involved, there's transformation involved, there's phoenixing involved, right? Phoenixing, if you remember from the webinar last week, was all about the burning, what happens when the burn and the crash has happened, right? Then the phoenix is born, the transition or the transformation. So this current square between Jupiter and Saturn is part of the waxing phase of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle that began with the conjunction back in 22 or 2020, December 21st, 2020. And the cycle sets the tone for a new era, and that was at zero Aquarius. So it's engaged with evolution, in innovation, and collective progress and transformation of societal structures. So 2020 to now, the early phase of the cycle has been about breaking down outdated paradigms, and especially around the way that we govern, the way that we use technology and in technology itself, and in community. And then 2024 on, beyond, right? The square is going to focus us on confronting the growing pains as we integrate new ideas and new technologies and collective visions into a workable structure. Saturn, workable, right? It challenges us to align intellectual and spiritual evolution, right? That's the key. So the tension is all about us taking the opportunity to grow and morph and transform and change. And then this square has also been preparing us for the outer planetary shifts of 2025, right? Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and of course, Pluto already did change signs in 2025, ushering in this whole profound reshaping of global energies, not just here in your life, in your state, in your country, but all around the globe. And the Jupiter Saturn square is the pivotal point that for that transition, right? And Jupiter in Gemini has been highlighting the need for adaptability, for communication, and for intellectual expansion. And in 2025, Jupiter will move into Cancer. And that shifts the focus from emotional intelligence into nurturing and creating a sense of safety and belonging, right? The people and the caring and nurturing of all. Saturn in Pisces encourages us to dissolve rigid boundaries and to connect with spiritual truths. Now, in 2025, Saturn moves into Aries, and that initiates bold new initiatives and structures and leadership potential, paradigm shifts in those areas. So, this square is pushing us to clarify a whole lot of things. in our personal lives, the lessons we've learned through time. And before we move on into emotionally charged and action oriented territory for 2025, how do we bring all of this in and find peace within it, right? Within these changes. And it's shaping new belief systems. And that has not been fully vetted yet. We don't know what that is taking us to. But we do see this evolving belief system occurring through the many different areas of our lives. And Jupiter and Gemini challenges us to question, to explore, and to expand our understanding of truth, real truth, not false truth, but real truth, often through taking in diverse perspectives and new information. And then Saturn in Pisces is calling for us to integrate spiritual wisdom into our lives and emotional depth into practical frameworks or practical everyday living, right? We're bringing all of that in. And then, of course, practical evolutionary kind of impulses, right? These two coming together this way refines our vision, reorganizes our societal sort of systems and frameworks, and then balancing speed with intention because Jupiter urges rapid progress and Saturn demands slow, more thoughtful action because it's about sustainability, sustainable outcomes for Saturn. Jupiter's just saying, let's move on, right? Let's get the show on the road. So it's a very important transit. And we're seeing, as I said, the second of three happening tomorrow, right? Tomorrow. But it's already been an impact. It's ongoing. There's no way to say, okay, today it's on and today it's off, tomorrow it's on, because that's not true. It's just that we as astrologers like it when they come into an exact conjunction. To me, I think about it as it's all around it, either in front of it or after it. It's all activated. And since August 19th, literally these two have been activating. So let's also look at what happens on Thursday, the 26th. So the day after Christmas or Boxing Day if you're in Canada. Mercury in Sagittarius comes into an opposition with Jupiter and Gemini and also comes into a square with Saturn. So we have a T square. Ooh, I have a picture of this for you guys. Here we go. So in pink, well, in green, let's as the Jupiter Saturn, Jupiter up here on this side and Saturn down here at the bottom. In green, that's the Jupiter Saturn square. And then in pink, which I should have used maybe orange, because you can't hardly see it, is the Mercury opposing Gemini. You can see the pink line that goes all the way across and then comes down to join Saturn. So there is a Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn T square, right? You see the T. That's why we call it a T square. Let me see if I can make that darker. It doesn't really get much darker, but there you go. So the T square. And that means Mercury is in the square to Saturn, Saturn is in the square to Jupiter, and Jupiter and Mercury are in opposition. And the empty point is up here in Virgo. So we're going to talk about this in terms of the clash between big ideas and practical details. Mercury is kind of, he's this messenger planet. So he's holding a lot of energy of messages, of information, of data. And he's in Sagittarius, which means he's also carrying with him these big ideals, right? So he's got the big and he's got the practical. And then there's the potential that one of the themes of the T square is about overwhelming information, right? There's if you think of him as a packet of energy, Mercury as a packet of details, right, or of information. He's got so much because he's carrying the big vision and he's carrying all the details, right? And he's, transmitting, receiving from both Jupiter and Saturn. So it can become overwhelming energy that comes in to play during the T square. And he's questioning, or he's having us question truth versus belief, right? What are we in belief system where we've just accepted at face value all the untruths, or are we looking for real truth? And he seeks universal truths in Sagittarius. But Jupiter in Gemini is challenging for him, right, to consider whether those truths are built on solid, balanced perspectives or falsehoods, right? So, for us as mere mortals on this planet, it's up to us to discern what's important to us in that information field. What's important, what's true, and the rest we just leave behind. The tip would be, to focus on what's really most important to you right now, where you are, and to look at where you might have been spreading yourself too thin, right? Taking in too much information and not being able to do much with it. Another gift would be about balancing speaking and listening, right? Gemini is a sign that has to balance both, right? The twins imply there's always this duality, and the duality is that communication is one part speaking and another part listening. So that comes into play. And then as Mercury squares Saturn in Pisces, we have grounding themes, grounding expansive ideas, right? An expansive idea is fantastic. But if you don't have the steps to put it into play, it's just going to stay up here floating around as this big, fantastic idea. So this T square invites us, demands almost, that we ground practically our ideas, our expansion ideas into reality. Now, the square, including in the whole T square, may feel like you're hitting a mental roadblock. And isn't it nice to have this energy of stillness and of joy going on underneath it all, so that our focus this week should be more on family and having fun and peacefulness and togetherness, and not necessarily on these mental things, right? Because otherwise mental fatigue can set in, and the square can sometimes cause us to hit resistance. um, Remember, it's all about love. And there can also be clarity amid the chaos of ideas. Saturn's grounding energy calls us to slow down and to think things through more, from a spiritual point of view when he's sitting in Pisces. So be mindful, right? Practice mindfulness during this period of time. Remember, the reason for the season is about peace and love and joy and family and traditions and harmony and all of that, right? So break through that mental resistance that you have. Maybe stop thinking. um, and then the T square, right? The T squares are always jacked up, right? This is very intensive energy when you're putting these together. And that configuration, as I said, is Mercury opposing Jupiter from Sagittarius to Gemini, and both of them squaring Saturn in Pisces. That's the T square. So that mental overload, expansion versus restriction, all the things that we just talked about as key themes are all inherent in the T square. But one of the things that we know about a T square is that there's always an apex and anti-apex, point of balance. And the apex, of course, is Saturn, Saturn in Pisces, and that is the point of resolution. So grounding dreams into reality is part of the resolution, embracing spiritual accountability, slowing down and focusing, right? Those are all part of the Saturn in Pisces at the apex point. The missing part is in Virgo, and that's the part of balance, the point of balance, we might call it. So this is where focusing on the small, manageable steps comes in handy. This is where service, shifting your attention from your personal struggles to how can I contribute to others in meaningful ways. This is where discernment comes in. These are all Virgo traits that balance this T square, where we evaluate ideas and information critically, right? We're critically looking at what really is the truth, sorting out what's useful, what's relevant from what's not, right? And all of this has implications for you personally, but also collectively, right, in the grand scheme of things. So this is bigger than just you or me as individuals. It's about all of us together here. So thank you, Nargis, for the reminder. Please like the video, if thumbs up the video, whether you're on Facebook or you are on YouTube, and then share it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're new here, and that is actually gets more people, involved in the energies of what we're living through at this moment. Now, I do want to pull us a card this morning, which I forgot to bring my cards over here, and I want to go to my Yuletide Tarot. Yuletide Tarot, beautiful Christmas tree on the front. And let's pull this. It has a guidebook in it called Midwinter, and it's illustrated. It's just a beautiful deck. And I feel bad that I haven't used it more frequently during these holiday times. But, it is what it is. Other messages have come through from other cards. And today we get this one. It is the Wheel of the Year. How fantastic is that? Here's the picture of the card and the Wheel of the Year kind of buried in snow. And it is part of in tarot, this would be the main cards. I forgot what they call those cards. Oh my goodness, where's my brain this morning? And it is card number 10. The Wheel of the Year. And it's a card of movement, of destiny, and of change. And this is a story kind of format, so bear with me here. High upon a mountain plateau in the depth of winter and half buried in snow is a golden tablet. Upon it are carved the stations of the year. We are able to clearly see 3 of them. The season of Samhain heralds the beginning of winter and is marked by the festival of All Hallows or Halloween. To the right, adorned with a snowdrop, is the season of Imbolc, which heralds the commencement of spring. Sandwiched between them is midwinter, the deepest and darkest time of year, and yet it contains within it the seeds of light that births the coming spring. I just realized, do I have that up right? The wheel turns regardless of our connection to it. It is a perpetual spinning of the seasons and the drama of sun and moon. This chase throughout the cosmos is a metaphor for the wheel of fate, or the beliefs that there are forces at work in our lives that we cannot entirely explain. Further meaning can be deduced by reducing the number 10 to 1 to discover a connection between this card and the Magus, which is card number 1, the Magician in typical tarot decks. The Magus has an awareness of the Wheel of the Year's power and the influence of the seasons upon one's life. This card represents a profound awareness of forces that may appear external, but are in fact an ever-turning facet of one's being. Here's the divinatory meaning. And I'm going to read both because I actually pulled it and it was in reverse. However, I really kind of like to read both. This card is attempting to ground you in a manner where you become aware of the forces around you and how you are not separate from them. There are times when we need to relinquish control and allow ourselves to succumb to the powers of the wheel and trust in its direction. Finding this card implies that change is coming, whether we like it or not. The control freak in you might despair at seeing this card, but take a deep breath and ride the wheel. In reversed, in this position, you might be feeling like you are losing control of your destiny and that other forces are driving you towards an unknown destination. Repeating patterns of habitual behavior may be preventing you from moving away from a situation that is not to your benefit. So there we go. That's a great card to end the show with this morning. All right, that is it for me, guys. I wish you all a very happy, merry Christmas, however it is that you celebrate that holiday. For whatever it's worth, I'm sending you much love, peace, and joy. I will see you on Friday after Christmas, the 27th, where we'll begin to take a look at what's coming in the month ahead. All right, guys, thanks so much. Much love to you. Bye.